Hi there. Let's talk about erections and ejaculation. The male sexual response has four phases. The first is arousal, which generally includes the formation of an erection. It is not required that the penis be physically stimulated. Arousal and erection can happen simply through thoughts, brain being the biggest sexual organ we have. But this is the period where the excitement is building. There is a noticeable increase in excitement. Plateau is where we've reached the near maximum level of excitement and it's being maintained for a period of time, eventually leading to orgasm, which is a series of powerful rhythmic contractions that are generally associated with ejaculation or release of semen. Finally, the last phase is called detumescence, and that just means returning to our normal resting state. Now, to understand erections, we have to go back and look at the anatomy of the penis a little bit. On the left, you'll see a penis with what is a long cylindrical body extending from the tip or the head of the penis well into the body cavity. And this is the corpus or one of the corpora cavernosa. If we look at the cross section of the penis, here's one and here's the other. So this is a pair of cylindrical bodies that extend from the glands of the penis all the way into the root, which is inside the abdominal cavity. There's another cylindrical body here that's underneath the corpora cavernosa. You can see it here. That's known as the corpus spongiosum. Spongy because it doesn't get as hard as the corpora cavernosa. And the reason is that it contains the urethra, which is the tube that will be carrying semen to the outside of the body. So if the corpus spongiosum got too rigid, too filled with blood, it would block the passage of semen to the outside. So this stays more spongy. These become very hard when erect. All of them are what are known as erectile tissues, meaning that they are designed to fill with blood during arousal. So erections are what we call involuntary. That means they're not under our conscious control. A person can't say, I think I'd like to have an erection and just make it happen, or have an erection and be like, you know what, maybe not right now, and just make it go away. So it's not something that a person can choose. Moreover, erections or the ability to form an erection has a lot to do with our mental state. Now, there are two branches to the nervous system that you may have heard of. I won't give you their fancy names, but they're often referred to as the fight or flight system and the rest and digest system. Fight or flight is when the body perceives that it's in danger. And when the body's in danger, it's going to send all of its blood to your heart and your skeletal muscles so that you can run and get away from whatever that danger is. So if that part of your nervous system is activated because you have anxiety, even if it's not because your life is actually in danger, it means that that part of the nervous system is going to prevent blood from accumulating in the penis or block the erection. For an erection to form, the rest and digest part of the nervous system has to be the one that is dominant. That allows the smooth muscle that forms the artery walls to relax, which allows the arteries to dilate. So the walls of the arteries, the vessels that are bringing the blood to the penis, are made of smooth muscle, and so if this is the artery and cross section, then for the artery to dilate, the muscle has to relax. Dilate means to get larger. And you can see from these two pictures, flaccid, not aroused, to erect, the arteries have gotten larger or wider. So that requires relaxation. Now, in order to understand how this produces an erection, I want you to imagine that you're looking at the artery and you've cut it open and unfolded it, and you're actually looking at the stuff that makes up the wall of the artery. pretend that it is a fabric, and that when the artery is not dilated, when we are not forming an erection, the fabric, the fibers of the fabric are close together, and therefore there's no real space to allow something to move from inside the artery to the outside of the artery. But when the artery dilates and it stretches that fabric, now there are openings in the wall of the artery that allow blood cells to pass and fluid to pass from the inside of the artery to the outside, simply because we've stretched those fabric fibers. So that's what's happening in the walls of these arteries. And what that means is that for instance, when the artery is not dilated and the penis is flaccid, there are no gaps in the wall of the artery that would allow blood in the inside to move to the outside and collect in these sinuses called lacunae. But when the artery dilates and that smooth muscle relaxes, now there are spaces in between the fibers of the fabric that allow blood to move from inside the artery to outside, and they accumulate here. And just like a water balloon, which when empty, the balloon is flimsy and floppy, but as you fill it with water, it becomes larger and more rigid. The same thing happens with the penis. It's basically like filling a whole bunch of little teeny tiny water balloons. And that is what results in the penis becoming larger and more stiff. Now, the other thing that happens as the blood is accumulating in these erectile tissues is that as these corpora swell, they push on the veins. So the skin and there's a stiff fibrous connective tissue in here that prevents the penis from becoming infinitely huge during an erection. So as these swell, they squeeze on the veins. The veins are the vessels that normally return the blood to the body. So basically, blood's allowed to come in and accumulate in these tiny little pockets, but it's not allowed to leave, at least during the time that the erection is present. And what's crazy is how high the blood pressure gets. Your heart generally, if with a normal blood pressure, produces about 120 millimeters of mercury of pressure each time the ventricles contract or the heart contracts. But in an erection, the blood pressure inside the penis, inside the erectile tissue, can reach 300 millimeters of mercury, probably even more than that. So it's much more than what your heart generates during a heartbeat. This is some serious pressure. Now, after the erection forms and arousal extends into plateau, we've got this period of maintained arousal. If we reach the point of orgasm, what happens is that there is a series of powerful rhythmic contractions. These contractions occur in the epididymis, in the vas deferens, in the seminal vesicles, in the prostate, in the urethra, and all of the muscles, you can see some of them here, of the pelvic floor, the muscles that sort of form a hammock to keep all of your pelvic organs where they're supposed to be. So all of that contracts in a series of powerful rhythmic contractions. One of the purposes of those contractions is to get the semen to the outside of the body. Now, this occurs in two phases. The first is known as emission. Emission is where the sperm, which are normally stored in the epididymis, epididymis contracts, moves them into the vas deferens. The vas deferens contracts and pushes them all the way to the end of the tube. That is emission. The next part of orgasm is ejaculation. And in ejaculation, the sperm move into the ejaculatory duct. The seminal vesicles contract and empty their secretions into the ejaculatory duct. The prostate contracts and empties its secretions into the ejaculatory duct. And the urethra contracts and moves the sperm plus the seminal components through the urethra to the outside of the body. So that's ejaculation. Now, ejaculation does not always occur with orgasm. It is possible, especially by doing Kegel exercises, which is where you deliberately strengthen and contract those pelvic floor muscles. It is possible to have an orgasm without ejaculation, which is handy because, sorry, didn't mean to do that yet, which is handy because once ejaculation has occurred, there is a period of time known as the refractory period where it's not possible to achieve another erection. If no ejaculation occurs, however, then it's possible to continue with the existing erection until you reach another orgasm. In other words, even people with penises can have multiple orgasms. Now, one of the other things that happens with orgasm, with those rhythmic contractions of all the tubes and all the muscles in the pelvic region, is that they're squeezing on blood vessels, and that's helping to push blood out of the erectile tissue back into the body. When someone has an erection and it is a full state of arousal, by the way, also the testes accumulate with blood during arousal. So when that happens and then an orgasm does not occur, then the blood remains in the penis and the testes, but especially in the testes, it creates a feeling of discomfort. This is what's known as blue balls. Blue balls do not actually turn the testes blue. It is a term that describes the discomfort that comes with arousal that hasn't been satisfied by orgasm. No, it will not kill you, but it can be really uncomfortable. By the way, women can also experience this, not so much in the ovaries, but when you have congestion or blood that's accumulated that doesn't go away quickly, as in with orgasm, it can create a feeling of discomfort for all of us. Okay, so in detumescence, where we're returning to our resting state, the veins enlarge as they fill with blood that's returning to the body. This is also the period during which we are refractory, meaning that it is not possible to achieve another erection. Now, how long does this last? It depends. The older you get, the longer the refractory period tends to be. But it's there's actually a range. So there's a short period of time where it's absolutely physiologically impossible, but in after that rigid period of time, there's a range, a flexible range, during which if the excitement is enough, then it's possible to achieve another erection. This can vary from time to time with each individual, and certainly varies over the years as an individual gets older. Now, all of this is pretty fascinating, I think, which is really my way of segueing into this little nugget that I find so amusing. So the word fascinating means to enchant. And in ancient Greece, there was this concern that spirits would come and enchant their babies, would fascinate their babies, and they would be brought over to the dark side. So sort of like the evil eye, protecting against the evil eye. Now, for whatever reason, they decided that the thing that would protect their infants from these fascinating witches were pendants that took the form of erect penises, generally with wings. So I'm not sure why they thought that an flying erect penis would protect them against evil spirits. I mean, I suppose if I saw one flying at me, I'd run away. So maybe that's it. But these are examples of the pendants that they actually made for their infants. And they are called, each one is a fascinus or fascinum. And it's because it's meant to enchant. So I guess you could say that erections are pretty fascinating, and that this is something that we've known since ancient Greece.